Good morning. If you want to go ahead and open your Bibles up to Mark chapter 14, so we're going to be starting in just a moment. As we get ready to consider some preparations that are being made in the book of Mark, I think we're all pretty familiar with preparations, especially given the time of year that we are in. Just this morning, Holly and I were talking about the preparations that need to be made to cook the 18-pound turkey that she got for us that is still doing its very best to unthaw in our fridge. We know all about making preparations. That's a huge part of our lives. We spend so much of our day preparing for something that is going to happen in the future. Big preparations are about to take place in the Gospel of Mark, and really what we're going to find happening here in chapter 14 is a turning point. Jesus' public ministry is coming to an end, and the fulfillment of what is about to occur is drawing closer and closer. We're going to see a huge shift at a look at what Jesus has been doing to Mark's focus on Jesus' journey to the cross. And as we do that, what we're going to see are various aspects, and we're going to take the remainder of the year to try to unpack that. And that is my hope. That's what I'm preparing for, is to try to bring us through to the end of Mark 16 by the close of this year and see what Mark is going to spend these last two chapters really portraying for us about what was going on and what occurs in this moment towards the end of Jesus' life. But for this morning, I want us to look at just a few verses in Mark 14 to show how things are gearing up towards that, and how preparations are being made, but also how hearts are being revealed through this story that we're going to see occur here at the beginning of this. So if you want to look at just verses 1 through 9, what we're going to see especially here is this preparing for the burial of Jesus Christ. So in verse 1, now the Passover and unleavened bread were 2 days away, and the chief priests and the scribes were seeking how to seize him by stealth and kill him. For they were saying, not during the festival, otherwise there might be a riot of the people. While he was in Bethany at the home of Simon the leper and reclining at the table, there came a woman with an alabaster vial of very costly perfume of pure nard, and she broke the vial and poured it over his head. But some were indignantly remarking to one another, "Why has this perfume been wasted? For this perfume might have been sold for over 300 denarii, the money given to the poor." They were scolding her, but Jesus said, "Let her alone. Why do you bother her? She has done a good deed to me. For you always have the poor with you, and whenever you wish you can do good to them, but you do not always have me. She has done what she could. She has anointed my body beforehand for the burial. And truly I say to you, wherever the gospel is preached in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be spoken of in memory of her." So Mark begins to set the scene for us, this moment where Jesus remarks he has been prepared for burial by this woman. And he begins first by noting that we're 2 days. He sets a timestamp at the beginning of Mark 14. We're 2 days away from Passover. But as we read through this, please understand that means we're 2 days away from the sacrificing of the lamb of Passover. We're 2 days away of Jesus giving His life for mankind. We're 2 days away from the seed of woman stomping the head of the serpent. We're 2 days away from Genesis 3 finally coming to fulfillment. All of the Bible has been pointing towards this moment that we're 2 days away from now in Mark 14. God's plan, created before the foundations of the earth, is going to be fulfilled in 2 days. Mark has brought us to this point. And what that also reveals to us is the chief priests only have 2 days to try to get their ducks in a row as well. The Passover is coming. We don't want to kill this guy on Passover. We don't want to arrest this guy on Passover. He's grown immensely popular, and this is going to cause problems if we were to do something, especially if we to do this on this holy day, during the Passover, during the start of this Feast of Unleavened Bread. We got to do something before then. And it reveals something already. Right in the beginning of this reading, we have the hearts of these Pharisees being revealed, and we've seen this. We've seen it before already, but through this account and through the upcoming mockery of a trial and through the crucifixion of Jesus, their hearts of deception and trickery and lying and murder, all accounts that point us to a figure in the Bible described as our adversary, Satan, the devil. They're revealing that same heart in themselves. We have to do this before thousands of Jews descend upon Jerusalem and gather for the temple. We have to do this before all of those that hold Him popular are here. We have to do this secretly. We have to do this quickly. There's a great heart of mistrust and of wickedness that is seen in them. But what's going on with Jesus during this time? We get this little tiny glimpse of the Pharisees. 2 days before the Passover, we have to do something because this great event is occurring. And again, 2 days before Jesus is going to give His life. But we find Him in Bethany eating at the home of Simon the leper. And because of the fact that there are other people there in the house with them, I think it's probably fair to say Simon who was a leper. It's very likely this is someone Jesus has healed. And therefore, the reason why there are other people in the house. And because of that, let it draw your mind back to John 12. I do not believe these are the same events. John 12 makes a very clear statement that this is 6 days before Passover. And while what we read here is 2 days before Passover. But yet, a very beautiful thing is happening in both. Someone who Jesus has greatly impacted. He has raised Lazarus from the dead. He has healed Simon the leper. And now we sit down to commune with one another. They sit down to enjoy this meal with one another. Something beautiful is happening here 2 days before Jesus is going to give His life. He is sitting with Simon, who has been leprous, who has been cleansed. And during this meal, this unnamed woman comes and she anoints Jesus' head with a costly perfume. We find out from the disciples that are there that the perfume is estimated to be at least 300 denarii in cost. It's a very, very valuable perfume that she has broken and poured upon the head of Jesus. And His disciples start doing this thing that we have such an ability to do. This is such a human thing to do. We see something good happening and go, well, that's not how I would have done it. I would have done this. I can't believe they didn't do that. We have this ability to see things that are happening around us and not be able to just stop and see the good that's happening, but rather focus on how we think it might have been better. The arrogance of that, this is yet again a picture of hearts being revealed, and yet they bring up very good points. She could have done something with this, like give it to the poor. What could the poor have done with a vial of perfume that's valued at 300 denarii? There's a lot they could do with that. And this is likely looking to customs that surround the Passover, such as you bring gifts to the poor at the time of Passover. There are very good things that could have done. Surely Jesus is going to take their side, but yet when Mark brings the narrative around to Christ, He does not side with them. He doesn't side with their self-righteous sort of attitude that says, well, this is what I would have done with that. Instead, he marks her as someone worthy of emulation, someone that is going to be remembered. He mentions that you have the poor with you always. She sees something about me that you're missing. She's seeing beyond. And so right away, we should take a lesson from that when I look at somebody else and the good they're doing, I go, I would have done it differently. Maybe I don't know everything about that situation that I need to know. Maybe I don't know everything, but she certainly has a better understanding of what's going on right now than even His closest disciples. But what does Jesus really remark about her that is so important? It says in verse 8, she has done what she could. She has done what she could. He doesn't note she has done a lot. She had done a lot. 300 denarii is a lot. She had done a whole bunch. But he doesn't note she gave fantastic amount to me. He noted she has done what she could. And what she could was give something incredibly valuable for the service, the use of Christ, to prepare Him, to anoint Him and prepare Him for burial. 300 denarii, just in case you're wondering, that is a lot of money. We'll just put it that way. It is equivalent to 1 day's wage. A denarius is equivalent to 1 day's wage. So if we just wanted to step back and look at this in our own eyes, what you made last year, that's about what she gave. What's able to be produced in the course of a year. She took that. Took you a whole year, 300 days to try and drum up enough to purchase this thing, and in seconds, it's gone. As she breaks the vial and pours it over the head of Christ, she gives it up, gives it away. She's done big things. Jesus recognizes, looks at her and says, she has done what she could. What can you do? Notice Jesus doesn't point to her and say, I want everyone to give 300 denarii gifts to me. He just points to her and says, when people tell the gospel, they're not going to be able to tell the gospel without talking about this woman. Because following the gospel and obeying the gospel implies doing what you can. Giving to Christ that which is valuable in your life and doing what you can in service to Him. This is obeying the gospel. This is why she is going to be a key figure in the retelling of the gospel of Jesus Christ. She gave much, but she gave out of a devotion and out of a love for Christ, which actually accurately displays what it means to be a follower and to receive the gospel. And we're going to see that as contrasted with another account as we read on, but I really want you to think for a minute about the other people in Jesus' life that He could have said this about. Because we've seen great things as we've read about those who follow Him. We've seen those who called and left everything, left their fishing businesses, left even though they had doubts, can anything good come out of Nazareth? We've seen people that have done great things. We've seen Peter in chapter 8 stand up and say, I know exactly who you are. You are the Christ, the Son of God. Which one of them does Jesus pause to say, this one will be remembered? But yet this unnamed woman who breaks the vial may have your theories as to who she is. I think she's unnamed for a reason. But her character and her actions and her devotion, that's the ID of who this is that Jesus is talking about. And that's who He is going to spend a moment, to just take a brief second to say, this woman will be spoken of in memory when the gospel account is preached throughout the world. That's an amazing example. An amazing thing has just happened in front of the disciples. An amazing thing has just been read about in your midst today. How is that going to affect you? Let's see how it affects them. We're just going to read 2 short verses really quickly before we get into the rest of it. Verse 10 and 11, Then Judas Iscariot, who was one of the 12, went off to the chief priests in order to betray Him to them. They were glad when they heard this and promised to give Him money, and he began seeking how to betray Him at an opportune time. I think we have this ability to read through the gospel accounts, and we get to passages like this, and we go, ooh, Judas. Oh, I don't like that guy. Every time his name shows up in the Bible, I get all riled up. How could he do that? How could he do that to Jesus? How could he do that? When this woman just did this great thing, how could he do something as terrible as this? I think we need to be careful having these sorts of attitudes. I think we need to take a long, hard look at Judas when we read through these passages and really try to understand the man behind the worst betrayal of all mankind. He's just seen this notable example of self-sacrifice, and what he's going to show us is a notable example of self-indulgence. He's going to go to the chief priests. This woman just gave up all this money. He's going to go, and they're going to offer him money. And he's going to be very happy to take that for what he can get as a betraying or as a turning over of Jesus Christ. We're going to flesh that out more as we go through the rest of the verses. We're going to read 12 through 21 here in just a second. We're going to flesh that out more. But just for a moment, stop and realize a contrast is already being made. We're beginning to see this contrast in these verses of the woman who gave so much, the woman who just sacrificed a year's pay, the woman who showed her devotion and her love and her understanding of who Jesus is with an apostle who's not noted as going to be remembered, but he's going to be remembered. The name Judas is going to go down in infamy as one who is untrustworthy, as one who is a betrayer of the friends that are around him, as one who is focused on what he can get. He's conniving. The idea of Judas carries with it someone who is going to do whatever it takes to get and provide for himself what he wants, what he desires. Judas is going to be remembered as well. But in our contrast, we're going to see a picture of someone who sacrificed for Christ and someone who sacrificed for themselves. Now, as we keep on reading, I want us to see how that contrast begins to be more painted out, but I really want you to focus on this as we read these next verses. The power of Christ through all this. What's going on? Who's in control? How Jesus is handling all of these things. Let's look at 12 through 21, and we're really going to wrap things up quickly with those verses. On the first day of unleavened bread, when the Passover lamb was being sacrificed, his disciples said to him, "Where do you want us to go and prepare for you to eat the Passover?" And he sent two of his disciples and said to them, "Go into the city, and a man will meet you carrying a pitcher of water. Follow him. And wherever he enters, say to the owner of the house, 'The teacher says, where is my guest room in which I may eat the Passover with my disciples?' And he himself will show you a large upper room, furnished and ready. Prepare for us there." The disciples went out and came to the city and found it just as he had told them, and they prepared the Passover. When it was evening, he came with the 12, and as they were reclining at the table and eating, Jesus said, "Truly I say to you that one of you will betray me, one who is eating with me." They began to be grieved and say to him one by one, "Surely not I." And he said to them, "It is one of the 12, one who dips with me in the bowl. For the Son of Man is to go just as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had not been born." So, everything is being set up here. We see at the beginning of this section, everything is set up for the sacrifice of the Passover lamb. Bringing that language into this narrative, I don't think is just coincidental to set the stage for this is the time frame things are happening, but this is what's happening. The Passover is about to occur. The lamb of the Passover is about to be sacrificed. Mark is preparing our minds to see what is occurring here at the end of Jesus' life. But having seen this, having come through this, Jesus now is anointed with oil. Jesus is prepared for burial. Preparations have been made for his betraying. Everything is set in order for this. And during this time, notice who's in control. It's not Judas. Judas isn't driving the boat here. He's not in charge and orchestrating how things are going to go down. It's also not Caiaphas. It's not the high priests. It's not the scribes, the Pharisees, the Sadducees. They are thrilled that Judas has shown up because we don't have a way out of this. We don't know how we're going. We got to do something before the Passover. We're not for sure of what we're going to do. Then Judas just kind of falls into our laps. Hey, I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm one of his closest 12. I will give him to you. And that's why they are happy, it says. So, they're not the ones that are in control here. You certainly can't argue and say Rome's in control here. I'm not sure that Rome at this point really has any idea what's even going on in Jerusalem, at least with this Jesus of Nazareth. But can you imagine what Jesus described happening here? He says, when they ask him the question, where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover? Somebody came to you today and said, I want you to go to downtown Somerset. You're going to see a guy carrying a red cell phone. out of one of the businesses. I want you to follow him to his house, go in the house after him, ask him who lives here, because I need to set up a place for my master to have a meal. And he's going to say, I'll go upstairs to the upper room, and it's going to be all ready there. You just got to go prepare it there. That is remarkably specific and extremely unlikely to happen. And yet, in just the most you miss this verse, completely look over this verse. Verse 16, the disciples went out, came to the city, and found it just as he had told them and prepared the Passover. Let's go on. Let's not go on. Verse 16 is instrumental to seeing something here. Jesus is directing the ship. Jesus is the one that's guiding us through the story. He's the one that's writing the narrative out. He's the one in control. And as we continue to read on, he's the one that knows Judas has already begun this phase that is going to lead him into where we're going to find, ultimately leading to his betrayal, his crucifixion. Jesus, he's not being defeated. He's not being tricked. He's following along with the plan that God has set in place. So as we go on with this, as this evening continues, this extremely unlikely event has occurred, and it has occurred exactly how Jesus has said it's going to happen. But that doesn't change anything. Because if you notice when they go in, and you have to imagine this is, at least I do, maybe you don't have to, maybe I'm just drawing this conclusion, but how do you not talk about that? As everybody gets there and we're sitting down to eat this meal and they say, hey, really good job, Peter, for setting up the meal for us. Thank you, Andrew, for getting all this ready. And it's like, hey, everything he said, we came into town, we saw the guy with the pitcher of water, we followed him, they brought us up here. Everything happened exactly how he said it. How are you, Judas, sitting here in this moment? What are you thinking? What's going through your mind? What becomes apparent is not much has changed as we get on with the story. Judas is still intent on doing what he has set out to do. But when they get in there, Jesus, being aware of this, communicates that to them. One of you, in verse 18, is going to betray me. And they start going exactly what we start doing. Is it me? I mean, he's been saying, everything he has said is right. He just gave all this detailed information about this very room we're in. Somebody's going to betray him. It can't be me. I don't want it to be me. Surely it's not me. Jesus, is it me? His response, it's one who's eating bread with me. And I've misunderstood this passage, I think. I've misunderstood this over the years. Because when I read that, in the years past, it always baffles me. It's one who's eating bread with me who will dip in the same bowl as me. Why didn't everybody just go on the no-carb diet immediately at that point? Like, that bread is tainted. I'm not touching another piece of bread for the rest of the night. And I've always wondered why everybody wasn't watching that bowl going, who's going to be the one to dip? Oh, it was Judas. He's the one that's going to do it. All of them are eating bread. All of them are dipping their bread. This wasn't something that Jesus said to orchestrate, this is how you know who's going to do it. This is something Jesus said to, again, flesh out the narrative. These are the people that are around me. And this is the type of person that is around me that is going to do this. Let me get us caught up here. I apologize. And we see that from our scripture reading this morning. If you look back to Psalm 41, I'm going to put just the verse that I want to focus on here just for a moment. Verse 9. He talks about those that are eating with him. He says, it is my close friend. My close friend whom I trusted. My close friend who I ate bread with. It is my close friend who has betrayed me. It is my close friend who has lifted up his heel against me. When we think of Judas, does your skin boil? When you think of Judas, do you become terrified? That a close friend of Jesus Christ could come to the point of betraying him. I don't like to look at myself and think of myself as a Judas. But I love to look at myself and think of myself as a close friend of Jesus. It's my greatest desire, to be a friend of Jesus, to be a friend of the Son of God. For that reason, it terrifies me to think a friend could come into the life of Jesus and betray Him. I can lift up my heel against the Christ. These are close friends. They're not the unnamed character of the beginning of this book. It's somebody that has been with Him, that has worked with Him, that has seen His power, that has been fed by Him, that has seen the effect that He has had on people around them. It is someone who knows this is the Son of God. We're never giving motives as to why Judas did what he did. And so anything that I could suggest is just opinion. But what we do understand is this is a friend. This is someone he trusted. Someone that we all should long to be. And someone who can be affected, tempted by our adversary to even betray the Son of God. A blinding contrast is being made in these passages. And that is, sorry, I'm way behind in our things today. A blinding contrast is being made in these passages, and that is this woman who considers what she could do for Jesus. She gives it all for Him. I'm going to go ahead and make that statement, even though the Bible doesn't tell us anything more about what else she had. Because when I say she gave it all, I'm not talking about the 300 denarii. I'm talking about the sacrifice. I'm talking about her love for Him. The very reason Jesus doesn't talk about the 300 denarii, but instead talks about the woman who gave it. She gave it all by giving her life to Him, by giving her devotion to Him, by giving her love to say, I will sacrifice whatever it takes. But having said that, I think it is important to note she does give a lot to Him. I can't imagine a bottle of perfume that costs $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. And maybe I'm shopping from the wrong catalogs. But I think of the first cologne that I bought was a $5 can of Allspice. Is that it? Old Spice. Allspice. I'm preparing for Thanksgiving. She gives up so much because she saw what she could do for Jesus. That is contrasted with Judas, who's not looking what I can do for Jesus. He's looking what I can get for Jesus. Now, how many times does that sort of language come into our vernacular? After we're leaving a worship service, after we're maybe even read a scripture of the Bible and we go, I just didn't get much out of that. It's not the same. I'm not trying to correlate that. Leaving a worship service, I didn't get anything out of that. I didn't get anything from the preaching. I didn't get anything from the singing. It's not the same thing as I can get 30 shekels of silver. That's roughly equivalent to a month's pay, by the way, compared to 300 denarii. It's not the same as saying I can get that for betraying Jesus. But is it maybe not the first steps towards getting to that point? Towards getting to the point where I say, you know what, I can get a couple more hours of sleep if I just don't go to church services this morning. You know what I can get? I can get a few more business contacts if I go out to drink with this group. Try to belong with them a little bit more. I can get my friends to not pick on me so much if I just kind of talk the way they want me to talk. You see how this notion of what I can get can start to spread. It can start to lead to the notion That maybe I and what I have and what I deserve is a little more important than who Jesus is and what He deserves as the King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I'm not saying they're the same. I'm just saying if we take a step back and we look at the contrasts that are made, I want to be remembered like this woman. But the temptation to become like Judas is there. We need to be aware of it. We need to be careful of it. We need to be reminded constantly that a close friend of Jesus Christ was tempted to do what he did. Instead of giving all, he makes a trade for what he can gain. The account goes on. We're going to stop because I want to give more attention next week to the Lord's Supper and what Jesus is doing and what's happening during this Passover meal. But as we stop here, let's just go back to the question that was posted at the beginning of this lesson. What's Jesus worth to you? When we think of that, do we think that Jesus is worth a year's salary to me? Jesus is worth me giving everything that I have? Or do we think of it in the terms of Jesus is worth what I can receive from Him? Maybe we do think of it that way. Maybe it's not always a bad way to think of that thing, because what do we receive from Him? We receive peace. We receive life. We receive redemption and salvation, freedom from our sins. How do you value that? What is Jesus worth to you? And what is your price on turning your back on Him? Because how you value that is going to set up what it would take. What's got to be put in front of you for you to betray the Son of God? I imagine there was a point in Judas's life that number was incomprehensible. There's not a number big enough. That's maybe true, maybe not. Let's say that it is. It doesn't matter. Because in Mark 14, we know the number is 30 shekels of silver. There comes a point when even the closest of friends can put a price on that and say, this is what it will cost. What is it going to cost you? This section reminds us that we, even as friends of Jesus, we as people who will look into His Word, see who He is, see the value of the Son of God sacrificing His life for us, have a risk that Satan puts in front of us to say, I will set something else up as more valuable than that. Call it an idol, call it entertainment, call it comfort, call it safety, whatever you want to call it. There is a risk that Satan knows and Satan is willing to try and tempt you with. So maybe, as we close, let's ask ourselves, what do we need to have an attitude like this woman who gave it all? This woman who did what she could do. Is Christ worth everything to me? In John chapter 10, Jesus talks a little bit about shepherds. And recognizing that sheep don't have an intrinsic value given to the shepherd. We've raised goats. Maybe that's what's wrong with my family. We didn't raise the right livestock. We raised the goats, but they're not that much different than sheep in the way that they act. And one thing you become very aware of is unless you have that bucket of food in your hands, they're not the puppy dog that's going to come up and love up on you. In fact, they're just as likely to butt you and knock you to the ground. They don't hold a huge valuable spot to the shepherd until they need him, until they're lost, until they're hurt. And then all of a sudden they're docile. Then all of a sudden they're ready for you to come and to administer to them. And they're ready to come with wagging tails right to the food trough and be fed. They recognize the need they have for the shepherd in that moment. John chapter 10, Jesus talked about the sheep that follow Him. Talked about how they are sheep that hear His word, hear His voice. They recognize Him. Do you recognize Jesus today? Do you recognize Him as the Son of God? Do you recognize Him as the one that has come to feed you, that has come to save you from your sins, that has come to lead you to the Father, to eternal life? Having a proper view of who Jesus is can help us to have the mindset of this woman to say, I will give up whatever it takes. I will do what I can do to be a follower of Him. Can we help you with that this morning? If so, I encourage you, let's talk about that together. Come forward right now as we stand and sing.